Espero que tenham tido uma noite agradável, um serão passado agradável e uma noite bem dormida, bem relaxada. E vamos começar a sessão de hoje com o professor Gerd Michelsen. Espero ter pronunciado bem em alemão, não tenho ido às aulas de alemão, portanto tenho falhado um bocadinho, mas de qualquer forma antes já me corrigiu e não é Michelsen, é Michelsen, menos mal.
Quite a difference.
Quite a difference, yeah. E então a Antje vai apresentar o professor, naturalmente vai moderar a sessão de perguntas e respostas que seguirá. O professor irá fazer a sua sessão em cerca de 45 minutos. E vamos todos desfrutar desta sessão magnífica sobre a sustentabilidade nas instituições de ensino superior e em que medida é que nós podemos ter um papel ativo nessa dita sustentabilidade. Vamos desfrutar todos da sessão. Vou deixar com a Antje. Obrigado.
Obrigada. I will just also stand up. Bom dia, good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and it's a pleasure especially to be here in company of Professor... yes, we have to switch on. Now I think, yes, here we are. So again, just also for the recording and who is following via streaming, good morning to everyone. And it's a pleasure for me to be here, and especially in the company of Professor Gerd Michelsen. And I have the honor to say a few words. It's a really interesting, or it's a special moment, not only interesting, it's a really special moment, I have to say, for me to be here introducing a person who practically has accompanied me during my study journey. And yesterday we have been also a little bit speaking about a time where sustainability in higher education was really still at the very, and it was just like emerging or getting more attention in general at the institutions. And I can say that Professor Michelsen was probably one of the most influential figures in the German higher education sector, and then spreading this also more internationally, who has influenced this discussion, the whole debate, how universities or higher education institutions need to integrate sustainability in not just something like an add-on, but more intrinsically, systemically into the institutions. And so during my studies during my bachelor's, we read publications that was in the 2000 something. We already read publications from the by then Institute for Environmental Communication from the University of Lüneburg, later called Leuphana. And it's really very special now to have a person here next to me who really has had this influence on the way also my own understanding of sustainability and all the work that actually we are all doing now here in our institutions is today here with us and can inspire us on our ways. Now, just let me also say a few words about his journey. Professor Michelsen, he studied initially economics in Kiel and Freiburg, but later on he moved to adult education, so his habilitation was then in adult education, and his reference is especially in education for sustainable development in higher education institutions. And he holds the UNESCO chair for education for higher education for sustainable development, actually since 2005, if I'm not mistaken. And he has been also professor for ecology, for sustainability and environmental communication. He received also an important scientific award in Germany from the Association for Environmental Management, and now I need to just put on my glasses because my own reading can withstand. And he and his fields of research fall into this broader field of of sustainability science and education for sustainable development in universities and beyond. And with another focus on especially environmental communication. And I think we can say that he was really ahead of his time by creating the Institute for Environmental Communication at Leuphana in the 90s. And later on, by his work, he was helping to pioneer that the University of Lüneburg, nowadays called Leuphana, has the first faculty for sustainability science, I think, in the world, we can say. So this was already in the 90s, having a faculty dedicated to sustainability science was something outstanding. I don't want to enlarge longer. I just would like to say one title of a publication that you co-authored, as I think that title resumes or summarizes well your work. And this is a publication from a work that Professor Michelsen co-authored with Hopkins and further colleagues, which is entitled Sustainability as a Purpose on the New Path of Learning for the Future. And I'm looking forward now to your lecture about sustainable development, a challenge for universities, and to inspire us on this path of learning for the future. Thank you very much.
Buenos dias. Good morning. Dear chairwoman, I must say, dear conference participants, thank you for your kind welcome. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to your conference, and at the same time, I would like to thank those who have organized one thing or another in advance, smoothing the way for me to come to you. Thank you, Anja. Now, if you're expecting me to deliver a multimedia speech with special effects, I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint you. I haven't even brought a simple PowerPoint presentation with me. Rather, I believe that sometimes it should simply trust the spoken word. I hope that over the next 40 minutes, I will be able to engage you in what I have to say. Let me begin with the questions. What can we do in face of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, which is a threat to Europe and indeed to the whole world? Hamas, war and terror against Israel, China's growing economic power and social influence, now accompanied with belligerent territorial claims, the growing number of authoritarian regimes in the world that are posing a challenge to democratic states and their liberal values, human rights being trampled underfoot in many regions in the world. I don't want to mention Iran. Human rights being, or the flows of migrants undertaking desperate journeys which mark the deep divide between rich and poor countries in the world. Can we speak or talk about sustainability and sustainability development? I know this is a rhetorical question. Nevertheless, I would like to complete this bleak picture of the world we are living in. The climate crisis is getting worse and worse, and yet there's a lack of political willingness to draw the consequences. Resource dependency has never been more evident than in the last year. Hunger is being deliberately deployed as a weapon of war. and the vast oceans are full of plastic waste, and the UN tells us that 1 million animal and plant species are now threatened with extinction. This terrible list could be continued, but I think I have already said enough to make it clear that we need to not only talk about sustainability and its values, but we also need urgently to act. But in order to be able to act effectively, we need knowledge, we need education and educational processes. From kindergarten to university and beyond to lifelong learning, we need education for sustainable development. Before I talk about the role and responsibility of universities and higher institutions in this context, I would like to say something about our understanding of sustainability and sustainable development. This seems necessary to me because both terms are often used in a misleading, if not to say arbitrary way. Sustainability is about how present generations, as well as future generations, can live well on Earth. Sustainability at its heart is about ethical values, caring for natural resources and natural life processes, for human dignity and human rights, and for justice. Sustainability is a guiding principle on which the world has agreed in the face of massive global problems, and one which must be put into practice by people in diverse societies and contexts. Against this background, it's not surprising that the idea of sustainability enjoys such wide support. Sustainable development is a process that leads to a state of sustainability, when the entire world population can meet its needs and aspirations for a better life, while ensuring that future generations can do the same. You hear Bo Brundtland speaking. However, let me repeat myself, we are far from even setting out on a development path that would take us to this. According to our understanding in Lüneburg, sustainability and sustainable development, as well as their opposites, involve 5 dimensions of social action: the ecological, the economic, the social, the cultural, and political. Together, they give us an analytical framework to consider unsustainable developments and their consequences, and to respond to them. Consider climate change. We are now witnessing its devastating ecological consequences. How climate zones are changing, sea levels rising, and extreme weather events increasing. Again, the list could be continued indefinitely. But climate change has also economic consequences, disrupting production and destroying jobs. And it has social consequences as well, such as changes in disease patterns and cultural consequences, such as Western societies struggling to cope with an influx of climate refugees. These impacts can be felt on local, regional, and global dimensions, as we have seen time and time. Climate change is complex. It affects us as members of a society, but it also affects each of us as individuals. Given the current state of the world, I see an increasing need to focus on the political dimension of social action for sustainable development. Let me indicate just a few keywords. What I believe is involved here. Political interests, power structures, our understanding of democracy, the right of resistance, participation, local, regional, and global action. I believe that a broadening of perspective is urgently needed if we are to grasp the complexity of the many destructive processes that we have set in motion and threaten the very basis of our existence on this planet. These 5 dimensions are crucial to developing new concepts and options for taking action that leads to change and to a more sustainable world. This change must be transformative. It must change values, attitudes, and behavior so that we can bring about a fundamentally different society. On the basis of scientific findings, we have to engage in the process of searching and learning to shape a decision corridor guided by so-called guardrails. This can only be realized with the broadest possible societal participation. A change in values and attitudes requires a change in our minds, in our way of thinking. And how can this happen other than through education? However arduous and disruptive such educational processes are, they are instrumental to transformative thinking. Our understanding of the role of education for sustainable development has changed as a result of national and international discussions, together with their reception by the public. While it was initially seen as a niche activity within the education system, this view has changed significantly in recent years, and it's now widely seen as a key to achieving global sustainable development. Indeed, it is an innovative concept that has given new meaning to teaching and learning at all levels of education. In particular, in higher education, which has a special role to play, as it can sensitize future decision makers to the challenges of sustainable development and empower them to take an active and responsible role in shaping it. At this point, I would like to address attention in education for sustainable development. Education claims to contribute to sustainable development on the one hand, while on the other hand, it initiates and supports each student's personal development. How can we avoid instrumentalizing educational processes for implementation of a socio-political agenda? How can we resolve this tension? And what would that mean in concrete terms for educational processes? Sustainable development is a normative concept, and so values and worldviews play a key role. It's not about moralizing, of course, but about explaining and questioning how values contribute to a sustainable development. A part of this is our understanding of nature, of its natural resources, and as is our understanding that we share one world. In their education, learners should not take on predetermined positions and attitudes, but should instead engage with different positions in sustainability discourses, explore them, examine their assumptions and their compatibility, and discuss democratic and peaceful ways of dealing with conflicts and solving problems. Building on everyday and professional experience, this process includes knowledge in its various forms: systemic, orientation, and action knowledge, as well as the ability to weigh up risk and formulate action plans. It enables thinking in alternatives and supports the active unlearning of previous views. Active unlearning of previous views. It deals with interests, conflicting goals and dilemmas, and open up the knowledge of how to shape a democratic community and the possibilities of participation. It promotes the development of one's own vision, creative solutions, and resistance to non-sustainable practices. In other words, education for sustainable development is about transformative thinking and action. Let me come to the aspect of universities and sustainability. Over the last 20 years, a number of higher education institutions around the world have pioneered ways to meet this challenge. They provide impetus for the development of key competencies among students in inter- and transdisciplinary teaching and learning settings by systematically integrating sustainable issues into their teaching. Let me name some of these universities and higher education institutions in Europe. The University of Natural Resources and Applied Life Science in Austria, the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands, the University of Lund in Sweden, the University of Barcelona in Spain, the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland, and the Leuphana University of Lüneburg in Germany as well. The number of higher education institutions in Europe and beyond that are addressing sustainability issues in higher education teaching has grown rapidly in recent years. Certainly, the UN Decade of Education for Sustainable Development and the World Programme of Action on Education for Sustainable Development, initiated by the United Nations, have made valuable contributions here. The current UNESCO framework program, ESD 2030, for example, supports this development, which aims at nothing less than the holistic transformation of educational institutions to empower young people as agents of change to improve present and future teacher competences in education for sustainable development and to integrate them more closely into local communities. This program seeks to embed education for sustainability as part of the 2030 agenda with its 17 sustainable development goals, one of which explicitly includes higher education in its endeavor to ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills necessary for sustainable development. It's goal number 4. Education for sustainable development unites formal and informal learning, making educational institutions, including higher education institutions themselves, a place of learning for sustainable development. It pursues the whole institution approach, which links educational goals with the environmental, economic, social, cultural, and political possibilities of the institutions to contribute to sustainability. This means, for example, that all members of the institution use resources consciously, that the institution give preference to regional and fair trade products, and in catering, for example, manage physical infrastructure and natural environment prudently, provide further training for all staff, and encourage participation in decision-making processes. Let me now touch the historical links between university and sustainability. The starting point of the discussion of higher education and sustainability is found in Europe in the Copernicus Charter from 1993 of the European Rectors' Conference at that time, which called for sustainability to be anchored into all levels of higher education. Then, between 2005 and 2014, in the context of the UN Decade of Education for Sustainability, as I already mentioned, sustainability took in greater significance for higher education. Universities that have embarked on the road to sustainability have a vision of themselves as future workshops, developing in constant dialogue with all members of society. As actors themselves, they have been involved from the outset in the debate on how to achieve a sustainability society and have made important contributions to the implementation of sustainability measures. It is worth repeating that it is higher education's institution that help shape the leaders, decision makers, and teachers of tomorrow. They do this by imparting scientific knowledge and playing a decisive role in their students' personal growth. They promote social engagement, enabling students to become the change agents of tomorrow's society, working to bring about a greater acceptance and faster implementation of sustainability. By imparting knowledge and skills and by living the values that profess, universities can drive much needed processes of societal transformation. Universities clearly have a crucial responsibility and role to play in the sustainable development and transformation of society, but they must do this without ever calling in question the fundamental right of academic freedom. What does such a vision mean for a university in concrete terms? I would like to illustrate all these considerations I've made before with the example of my own university, Leuphana University of Lüneburg. Since the 1990s, Leuphana has been addressing environmental and sustainability issues in teaching and research, as well as in the institution itself. It sees itself as a university for the civil society of the 21st century and is guided by the principle of sustainability. Since the end of the 1990s, change processes have been initiated by the university, initially in the form of projects, and then in the form of an innovative concept for bachelor's and master's programs in which sustainability and sustainable development play a central role. In 2010, a Faculty of Sustainability was established, the first of its kind in Germany and I think beyond, and sustainability management became a part of the university. It is business operations in a mobility concept that prioritize public transportation and bicycles, and in a sustainability commission that has initiated university-wide change. The Leuphana University publishes regularly a sustainability report, and the university campus has been carbon neutral since 2014. There are currently around 10,000 young people studying at the university. I would like to now say a few words about our bachelor's program, the so-called Leuphana Bachelor, inspired by the Anglo-Saxon model. It consists of a major and a minor field of study, rounded off with a complementary effective or elective course each semester. The program is built on the first semester, the so-called Leuphana semester, in which all students, regardless of major, take the same modules and ways which introduce them to scientific work, its methods and ways of thinking, the responsibility of science, and a critical understanding of scientific findings. All in all, it's a concept that presents a great challenge, not only for the students, but also for teachers and the university in whole. I needn't tell you that establishing such a program at the German universities has not been without conflicts. The module called Transforming Knowledge, Responsible Action deals with sustainability and the concept of sustainable development, and is at the core of the first semester experience. It takes 1/3 of the first semester. 1/3. There is a plenary lecture which is accompanied by project seminars with tutorials to give students their first taste of interdisciplinary works in groups. Student projects are presented and critically discussed by students in a so-called conference week at the end of the semester with about 1,500 students. So it's a real event at the end of the first semester. Reflecting on this concept of sustainability and its implication for our value orientation, our understanding of nature and our openness to engage with complex issues all play an important role in the module. In addition to question about the importance of and responsibility of science, the focus is on understanding the analysis and problem solving. It's the understanding that analysis and problem solving must address the different dimension of social action: environmental, social, economic, cultural, and political in their interrelationships. They learn about how conflicting interests and points of view need to be negotiated in order to move towards sustainability, so as not to remain at an abstract and theoretical level, and to make clear what contribution science can and should make. This discussion is based on actual problems and societal challenges. Sustainable development is intimately linked to processes of social change, which brings the political dimension into focus. It can and should never draw students' attention to the fact that they must make a responsible contribution as members of civil society and as future leaders in business, administration, or politics. Both the international discourse on sustainability and regional or local practical examples are integrated in the formulation of sustainability strategies. Instead of focusing on the education of individuals, the module promotes cooperation across disciplinary boundaries, also with societal actors. In general, it initiates learning processes about sustainability and sustainable development, supports them through active student engagement with the most pressing question of our time, deepens their understanding of methods and how to present their findings, and organizes them together with other students so that they can do justice to the complexity of society's grand challenges. Let me dwell for a moment on the teachers and in this module. Their goal must be to make these issues accessible to students without simply imparting knowledge. This does not mean, of course, that teachers shouldn't introduce students to their subject matter. But this introduction should be understood as a starting point for them to do further research themselves and to take note of additional scientific literature. It is understandable that the university's teachers, who are themselves deeply engaged with an issue, it may be difficult to show restraint. But the change of the role from lecturer to facilitator and partner in a search and learning process is crucial. For some teachers, this has been and continues to be a difficulty, if not impossible, challenge to meet. This change in perspective is supporting by change in teaching culture, which after a few stumbling blocks has been supported by an annual training course of several days for all teachers in the module. Within the innovative program of study in general and with the module transforming knowledge, responsible action in the first semester of bachelor's program, Leuphana has certainly succeeded in making a big impact in education for sustainable development. However, time does not stand still, and new aspects have emerged that are crucial to society, but do not yet play a central role in our degree program. One example is the increasing digitalization of society, and another is diversity in its various forms. These developments cannot simply be added to those who have already identified as crucial for sustainability. Rather, they must be seen in relation to the guiding principle of sustainability and the task of sustainable development. Let's take as an example sustainable development and digitalization. They are both key drivers for social change processes. However, while sustainable development seeks a value-oriented transformation, digitalization has an ambiguous role. It can support this process, but it can also reinforce unsustainable developments. If digitalization is to support sustainability, we must critically examine the use of new technologies and their potential to contribute to sustainable development. These new technologies can be used to stimulate future scenarios or to calculate alternative paths of transformation, but that means that students need to be able to critical about the origin and quality of data, for example. I do not want to go into specific at this point. I'm simply pointed out that innovative concepts of programs of study or modules to be continuously developed. I could go on and on about the transformation process at Leuphana University, but perhaps this would be better done in conversation during the breaks. The following points, which I consider essential, may serve as a starting point. First, we must not be discouraged by the global developments I described at the beginning and lose heart. We must continue to initiate and pursue processes of sustainable change at universities and higher education institutions. Second, this requires a clear understanding of sustainability and sustainable development. One that combines a systemic view of the concrete challenges facing us today. Third, the concept of education for sustainable development plays a fundamental role in innovative university teaching and requires a new culture of teaching and learning, one supported by further training for university teachers. The whole institution approach, which focuses not only on research and teaching, but also on the operation of the university, offers important points of orientation for the transformative process of a sustainable university. Transformation processes can only be successful if they take place with a broad participation of all university members, together with all of its stakeholders. And last but not least, the transformation of the university towards sustainability is possible, but it requires time, perseverance, and committed supporters as you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your lecture, for sharing your thoughts. And I invite us all now to use this opportunity to enter more into this dialogue and think together about how we want to proceed on this journey. We have all here very dedicated people, and eventually some questions have come up, so feel free to ask and use this opportunity to ask questions directly. We have support here with a microphone, so you can just raise your hand and you can get the microphone. And there's the first question in the middle. Yeah. Sandra, you want to?
Good morning, Professor. Thank you so much for your thoughts, for your ideas, and for your vision, and to share with us all your knowledge. So I have a question. It's an old question, I know, but I need to share with you because I would like to listen how you engaged, because you said during all your talk how is important that transformative learning, the action within the teachers, for them to be innovative, for them to read and be engaged with literature about sustainability. So how you engage the teachers to be innovative within their fields. And now I'm talking not teachers that work already with sustainability, of course, but the ones that work in the different fields, like how you engage a teacher from history or from mathematics to engage with their students and to learn them in more be able for the students to learn in a more transformative and interdisciplinary way, because, I don't know, people from the different backgrounds, we know that they are so worried to teach their students with their specific subjects. So how you engage the teachers, because I know this is an old question, an old discussion, but we are always facing these issues and how to engage the teachers, not only to teach in a more transdisciplinary way, but also to engage in new innovative ways of learning within their subjects. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the question. Of course, it's essential to get other teachers from other subjects be engaged in sustainable development questions as well. But as I can say from my point of view, it's a very, very long process to get into contact with them, and then to talk about what can the part of history be in the sustainable development process, for example, or what role can musician play in this context, for example. And there are some possibilities to make connections between history and, of course, music and other aspects. So it's a long process, as I said before. But well, we have, and you have to start at first with the colleagues which are quite near to the most or to the challenges of sustainable development. Natural science colleagues, colleagues from economics, and so on. And we tried it in Lüneburg with the lecturers in the first semester. We started the further education process with them. Because at the beginning of our new program, I went to all these lecturers and asked them, what kind of experience did you make with in your lecture or in your project seminar? And I was really shocked at the beginning because they told me, well, I gave a short introduction, then I had some I gave to the students questions, they should write a thesis about it and then present it. So that was the normal process at university teaching, or in university teaching at that time. So I really was shocked after I have heard it a second and third year. Then I went to the president and said, well, if we want to have or want to be successful in our process, we have to start a further education process for our lecturers at the university. And he was open for it. And so we started a 4-day program with them at the beginning of the winter semester. And we had at that time about 50 or 60 lecturers in this first semester, or in our module, which I was responsible for. And so we taught them about understanding of sustainability and sustainable development, because we realized that quite a difference between these understandings. And that's the reason why I tried to explain a little bit at the beginning of my lecture what we should understand about sustainable development and sustainability. We gave, or we had the opportunity to talk about teaching methods. What does it mean not to be a lecturer in the front of the seminar, but just as somebody who goes with the students through this challenge they have in the project seminar. So the different roles of teaching, etc. And I must say, after 5-6 years, it became a little bit better, improved. I wouldn't say it's almost, we are almost at the end, but it's still a process, and there's still coming new teachers, professors, etc. But it takes quite a long time. And there was another experience I want to explain, because students in the first semester who study or want to study later on economics, for example, went to the teacher in their economic faculty and they were asked, why don't we hear anything about sustainable development in our seminars, in our lectures? So that was an impetus for the faculty to think about what can we, or what do we have to change, and that is the first step just to move in the direction of sustainability in for example, in the Faculty of Economics. And so that's what I mean. It's a long process of having some changes at our institutions and to make a little bit of progress. But it takes time, and we need people who are engaged in all of these questions and who have the role more or less of the chance to multiply the ideas of sustainable development. So it's not an easy answer I can give. But, I don't have a recipe for it, but there are different ways, and you must try at your university how it works.
Thank you for answering. Thank you for asking these very important questions to many of us, I believe. More questions. Please don't be shy. And there's the next.
Thank you. I'm aware that many institutions in Portugal worried about the sustainability issues in their educational programs. They have been trying to mobilize data from the actual experience, lecturing experience of their professors, and they're trying to mobilizing those data in such a form as to asking the teachers or the professors what are the sustainable development goals that are involved in their teaching, right? And so we are seeing some kind of reporting on the SDGs that are covered by several lecturing fields and so on. So in this, well, I don't know exactly, because I don't know how these processes are being developed in all institutions. But I have the sensation that this may lead to some kind of bureaucratic approach to just to be able to say that, well, we're dealing with several SDGs in our lecturing activities. And this is connected with one issue that you, Professor, raised during your lecture, which is the democratic participation of the community, of the higher education community in the sustainability development, so to speak, inside the teaching and the higher education's role in forming the future leaders and so on. So my question is a little bit related between these two issues. And since you gave this answer to Sandra, there's a third aspect. I mean, if we want to avoid a bureaucratic approach to this issue, which probably is not very productive, right? How can we manage to engage the community in participating in how the process should be developed? And since you are saying that this is a very slow process, and I agree, because it's logical that it should be slow, right? How can you manage to combine all these things? I mean, ensuring democratic participation by people who are actually not very well prepared to lecture within their own areas in sustainability issues. And how can we do this? I mean, I think that democratic participation is a way of avoiding bureaucratic approaches. But at the same time, if this is a very slow process, how do you combine these things in order to ensure the democratic participation?
Well, first I agree. It's you can't ask the teachers or professors which sustainable development goal did you discuss in your lecture, for example. It's really a bureaucratic way. I can discuss about water problems and so on without any consequences for sustainable development. But I can say that Sustainable Development Goal number 10 or 11 or 12, but it doesn't mean anything about how do I think about the idea of sustainable development. What kind of values do I combine with that idea, etc., etc. How do we see something a little bit more critical as we do now? So it is really necessary, I would say, first that, for example, the presidents or rectors of the institutions are convinced of the idea of sustainable development and tell their professors and scientific researchers that sustainable development is a very important goal we have to integrate in our university, and we have to change our research and teaching methods. But that's only one step. And on the other side, as I mentioned before, we need people who are really engaged at the institution, who want to do something and who want to change something at the institution, and we must find ways, and they are very different from institution to institution, to help them to go in that direction. The third point is really education as well, further education for all people at the higher education institution, just to understand what does it mean, sustainability and sustainable development. What does it mean for my own teaching? How can I students involve in questions of sustainability? But it's true what you said, I said before, it takes really quite a lot of time. You must be very, very careful in this process. You can't think that you will have change everything already tomorrow. And not on the third or fourth day already. You need time for it, and you need really, really people who are have some constant engagement in all these questions.
Thank you. More questions. We still have a bit time before we go to coffee break, so.
Thank you for your presentation. And my question is more about the module you talked about in the first semester, and to understand better, the several courses of the university, all of them have that very same module. And who are the teachers? Are teachers from different areas that combined to deliver that model, or some specialized person in sustainability? And well, this was the question, and it was, yes, how, well, this mainly is the question, and reducing the number of hours for other topics, because 1/3 of the semester is occupied with this. Was that a problem, or how was it solved in the whole, well, study plan? Thank you.
Well, it's a complex question. We only made quite a lot of experience with that, as you can imagine. So at the beginning, it was difficult to have enough teachers from the university itself. So people were not, on the one hand, not able, and on the other hand, they didn't want to teach in this first semester module. Because, well, I don't teach for the students in the first semester. That's some kind of thinking. But, well, we improved and got more and more people from the university involved in this in the teaching process. But we have about, I would say, 50% from lecturers from outside. We have to pay them extra money to come to the university and to teach there. And they are experts in some fields of the great challenges, in climate questions or in water questions, etc. So they came to us and we integrated them. But they had to know how to teach in this new model and how to not just to give a lecture, but just to work with students. So that was a process I described a little bit in my lecture. And lecturers or professors from the university didn't get only two so-called, we call it in Germany, two semester weeks per hour. So that's the measure for a seminar. If you have a seminar, 2 hours seminars, you get, if you have to teach 8 hours, 2 hour seminar means 2 hours of the 8 hours you have to teach. And in our example, the president said, well, they get 3 hours for 2 hours teaching. So because it was more intensive, it was in a way interdisciplinary teaching, etc., etc. So that was the bonus they got from the university for teaching in the first semester. But that was a process as well. It wasn't from the beginning on, but we realized it was necessary to give some motivation for the teachers to get integrated in this module.
Yeah, thank you. I see one more question here. Please, can you raise again your hand? And the woman in the white pullover. And I don't know if there are more questions. We want to close in like around more or less 5 minutes. So if it's a short question, we can accept one more afterwards. Okay.
Thank you so much for your interesting talk. Yes, it's a very short question. I'm just curious to know, because currently we are talking about education for the students and for the academic staff. And I'm just curious to know the role of the non-academic staff in this process. And my main question is that, do you think education for non-academic staff has the same priority as we have for the educating for the educators and educating for the students? Or educating for non-academic staff like the administrators should be the second priority at your university? I would like to know your approach about education for non-academic staff, because you also emphasize that the first issue that would be very important is to make the university staffs, teachers, education about the concept of the sustainable development first. And it would be a regular issue for the whole university community. I just want to know the priority of non-academic staff in this issue. Should be involved in the same time with the educators and the students, or should be the second priority? Many thanks.
I agree. We should educate everybody at the university and get them involved in questions of sustainability, because all people who work at the university have to understand why should we change our institutions, and why do we have to change our institutions. I will tell you a little story. When we started our process at the university, it was at the end of 1990s already. We started 1998, 1999, with very, very great conflicts between the professors and researchers. But we started with a project, quite big project. And the interesting point was that the non-academic staff at the university was more involved in this process and expected more positive results than all the others at the university. Even the students, they were very reserved against this idea at the beginning. So I invited them to take part in our project, but from about 6,000 or 7,000 students, just 2 showed up to some meetings. So that was our experience at the beginning. And normally you close the book and say, well, that was it. But we tried to continue. And at the end, I think we were more successful than the others.
Yeah, great. Good to hear these lived experiences, really, these stories. Okay, another short question. Someone else? If not, I have a short question to you as well, because you said in your talk, in your lecture, that it's crucial also that we nurture, we develop our understanding of nature, and that we are sharing one world. And when the students, or actually all the academic community, when we are in our higher education institutions, they are still very much organized, not like being part of nature, and also not like very much sharing one world, but we are still very fragmented in our disciplinary departments and so on. And what has been your experience, or what Leuphana has tried to bring a little bit influences towards nature on campus, or being part of nature? We are sharing one world in the physical institutions. What changes have happened along the time? If you can give a short example or something. Thank you.
Well, I can make it clear this little story as well. At the beginning, I just mentioned our first project about sustainable development. I organized this project in such a way that I asked colleagues from different faculties to get involved in this project. And they got some project money, of course, for it. And teachers from the or chemistry, biologists, economists, educators, they all were involved in the first project. So that was already an interdisciplinary way to work together. And of course, they talked about their own experience with other colleagues in their faculty. And so they get some impression how it is to work in an interdisciplinary way. And the next step was transdisciplinary, to get people from, or actors from the society involved in these processes. Again, it's not a process that happens by its own, but you have to give good examples. You have to show that it works, so that you can convince other colleagues from this way of research, doing research, and doing your own teaching. Mm-hmm. So it always, again, takes time.
Yeah. And speaking about time, there is a coffee break waiting for us. If there is not another last burning question, I do not see, then I thank you once again so much for coming to our conference, for sharing your thoughts with us, for your time, and Professor Michelsen is still a bit around, so we can also still use a coffee break eventually for another conversation here, and thank you again so much. And I think regarding the program, the coffee break is again at the same place like yesterday in the library, and we continue with the parallel sessions at 11:30. 11:30, yeah. Thank you. Okay.